Attention! The Looking Up, Looking Out hosts businesses and services are limited to serving individuals located in their areas and only apply to viewers located in Washington State, Oregon, and North Carolina. Disclaimer: this video discusses health topics in a general sense. This information is not meant to diagnose, treat, cure any condition, or be a replacement for any medical advice. Please seek medical advice from your healthcare provider and medical team. This discussion is strictly for general education only. If you do not live in the Washington State, Oregon, or North Carolina areas, and you have questions about your individual nutrition needs, please contact your local healthcare provider for a referral to see your local registered dietitian. To find out your individual exercise needs, please contact your local exercise specialists. Thank you.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Looking Up, Looking Out podcast. This is where we look up health information, fads, and facts. That way you don't have to. My name is Talya Jackson. I'm a personal trainer and health coach, and I'm based in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
My name is Riley McCorkle. I'm a dietitian and diabetes educator here in Spokane, Washington.
My name is Samantha. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, as well as a certified exercise physiologist based in Tri-Cities, Washington.
Thank you guys for joining today on our podcast. We're really excited to share this information. Today, we're going to be having Riley talk to us about the Mediterranean diet. So we're going to talk through what that is, some important things to know, and have a little bit of a discussion on why this is important for you to know this. You ready, Riley?
Ready. Thanks, Talya. So I guess there's a lot to be said about the Mediterranean diet. It seems like every time we're in the grocery checkout line, the Mediterranean diet is like the large font, larger than the name of the journal. So, and few diets have sort of stood the test of time in the way that the Mediterranean diet has. It's kind of outlived the various different types of low carb diets and fasting. And we've sort of always had this Mediterranean diet for the last 30 years, it seems like. But I wanted to make this more of a discussion. We have basically 3 fun facts about the Mediterranean diet, and we can kind of spin off from there. So the first fun fact is that the Mediterranean diet, for people who have had a stroke in the past, it can reduce their chances of a second stroke by 36%, which is on par for some of the different statin drugs or people who take aspirin to reduce stroke. So it's a pretty powerful impact that diet can have in reducing something that is one of the top killers in the Western world. So there's my first fun fact. Any thoughts on stroke? I know we have similar data with heart attacks, but I could certainly go on.
Interesting how much it changes, or how big of a difference it makes in the diet with something like a major medical emergency, like a stroke. I think people think about, I don't think that's something that people think about. I think maybe they come to mind, reducing sugar for diabetes, reducing high cholesterol foods when you have high cholesterol or anything like that, high blood pressure. But I don't think people think about strokes. I don't think it's something that innately pops into people's minds. So I think that's amazing how high that percentage is, even though like 30% doesn't sound that big, but when we have millions of people here in America, that's a very large percentage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
I agree. I think it's quite a significant number. And And it's incredible to think that just something as some people might think as little as some dietary changes and nutrition lifestyle changes can make a big difference like that.
Speaking the truth, I know that a lot of times when people are thinking about nutrition and popular culture, we think weight loss basically. And so it's good to know that something as impactful and life-saving as that benefit can be absolutely achieved with a Mediterranean diet. There's a second fun fact I wanted to dive into here, and that is that there's such thing as a scoreboard for the diet. So it's not as if we have to follow the Mediterranean diet to a T. There's it's a continuum. On one side, it's kind of standard American diet where we don't have a lot of these fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, beans. But on the other side, we have lots of that. And the scale basically goes from a 0 to an 18. So, and they've seen that much of this data that we can jump into, they're not looking at did people follow the Mediterranean diet or not, and what was their stroke risk, but they're looking at if people increased their diet score by 2 points, how much of an impact did they have? So that's pretty exciting that it's really about progress and not perfection. I assume that definitely the progress, not perfection mentality would certainly play a role in the settings that you two work in.
Definitely. I think it's something that is easier to it's something that it's easier for people to grow into instead of, because food changes is probably one of the hardest changes that people can make, outside of maybe if they have an addiction or, other circumstances. But if they can have something to work up to where you can take baby steps, where you're able to get consistent with it, I think that's going to make it more long lasting versus, all right, you have to eat all of these things all the time and cut out everything else, cut out the fast food, cut out the eating out, cut out the chips. I think it makes it less daunting for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. I feel like when the first thing when people think of having to make nutritional changes, they think of the word diet, and diet is, to me, a scary word based off of what I've heard from clients. They think they have to be really restrictive, limit all these foods, they can't eat what they would like, and it's very difficult. It's difficult to follow. There's lots of obstacles trying to be healthy, thinking that they have to follow it a certain way, but also not have room for any of sort of trial and error. And so I feel like when we kind of change the conversation to making it more appealing, like lifestyle changes or nutritional lifestyle changes, it almost opens up the conversation to clients being more open-minded to these different changes, where it's like, actually, if we look at the kind of food components of the Mediterranean diet, it's more so the types of foods we're eating, but we're also not completely having to cut everything out at once. I mean, all of these, I feel like most people forget it's kind of small, subtle changes at first until we get to that bigger picture where we want to be. But having those very important components of what Riley was saying, the emphasis on the vegetables, the fruits, nuts and seeds, all of those, olive oils, the fish, protein. And so having those components in their meals, makes all the difference. And even just like small changes from red meat to more of the pescatarian type of fish as their protein source, I mean, it does lots of good change.
Absolutely. Yeah, and especially when people are having to get into this bandwagon mentality where on January 1st, I'm going to follow a ketogenic diet. And then as soon as they go out for like pastries with a family member, then they feel completely off the bandwagon and they throw the whole thing to the fire, and then they're completely either on or off their plan. So that is reassuring that there can be a continuum of progress. Just to relay some of these benefits that are seen, I know certainly the research has expanded past cardiovascular disease and looked at like overall mortality, let's say, as they follow a cohort of people. We can broadcast this image on overlay it on our Zoom video here, but if you are able to see this table, basically for at the very top we have overall mortality. They'd taken into consideration 750,000 people, and 50,000 of which of those people had had the undesired outcome of mortality or early death. They found that every 2-point increase in this Mediterranean diet score reduced their risk of dying early by 9%. So it's sort of how we read these. Basically, you'll see that there's a line down the middle which represents no effect, and if it's on that left side, this is my left, I guess this would be your left, then we want it to fall on the left side. That means the risk is decreased from that middle line. So, but the third and final fun fact about the Mediterranean diet is it doesn't have to be Greek food. So I've had people ask like, but I don't like garlic. And I say, it's okay. You don't have to include garlic. I mean, just things like, I guess a better example would be fish. Somebody is allergic to fish, so I can't follow the Mediterranean diet. Well, with that said, the parameters, and I'm wondering if Sam, if you could expand on this a bit, but the different food groups that are involved in the Mediterranean diet don't necessarily have to include fish. Like that can give you extra points on that scale, but it's not the only diet food group that will make it so you're following a Mediterranean diet. As long as we're following those sorts of those preferred foods and those less frequent foods according to the Mediterranean diet recommendations, we could be in Japan or China, we could be in Latin America and follow those sorts of parameters still.
So yeah, so not necessarily fish. I mean, we could get protein from beans, peas, lentils, the different nuts and seeds. I think the kind of whole focus is limiting the unhealthy fats and kind of maximizing our benefits from the healthy fats. So olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds to kind of increase olives as well, some of those healthy fats, and just kind of lessening any red meats, kind of high fat dairy products, as well as processed foods. And again, lessening, it's not necessarily like cut everything out. We can't have these foods at all. It's more so we're trying to limit these foods to where they're not our sole like point and focus in our meals. But I mean, if we have them once in a while, not as frequent as we used to, I mean, that is definitely good steps towards reaching that goal.
So pretend I'm today years old. I don't know much about the Mediterranean diet other than I'm thinking Greek food. Can you lay out the biggest staples? So I know it doesn't have to be fish, but what are the, I guess, overall parameters of this diet so people can kind of know what that is?
Do you want to take a Sam, or I can jump in?
Yeah, sure. So basically, this, in a sense, quote unquote, diet, or I would like to say lifestyle change, would be focused on, plant-based foods. So like vegetables, fruits, grains, beans, peas, lentils, nuts, seeds. And these foods, they provide lots of fiber, healthy fats, protein, vitamins and minerals, and other beneficial nutrients. And so we definitely want to just be more considerate, and in general, the kind of helpful Mediterranean kind of approach to our dietary changes they're lower in calories, lower in sodium, lower in added sugars, and lower in the saturated fats than other diets. And so I believe that's what the appeal to this nutrition approach would be, is it has these main staples, and they are, in a sense, and they're promoting healthful fats and, yeah, protein sources that are, for the most part, plant-based. Of course, you can get them from seafood, but as we know, there are some individuals who have those particular allergies. But yeah, definitely, I would say those would be the main kind of emphasis on this sort of lifestyle nutritional change.
So 2 questions then pop in my mind. Is the biggest difference between Mediterranean and plant-based just the incorporation of that you can't have meat, whether it's fish or whatever? And then second of all, if somebody is maybe more weight loss focused, I think sometimes people get scared of, well, nuts and beans and stuff like that. Like they have, in terms of percentages, if they've looked up macronutrients, they have more fat in them. What would you kind of talk to that person about when it comes to foods that maybe have a little bit higher fat content?
I've seen people go overboard on nuts. It's really easy to do. It's like, oh, nuts and seeds are unrestricted on the Mediterranean diet, and that's true. And I would say that would definitely reduce our risk of cardiovascular disease. Like Sam said, we could get more into the molecular level of what's going on with those types of fats, but the unsaturated fats are basically keeping our blood vessels lubricated, elastic, flexible. So then when we're because they're calorically dense foods, we may have to overlay the Mediterranean diet with like a calorie control. So we might not want to go overboard on the nuts. Generally, when people are shifting to a Mediterranean diet from like a standard American diet, they're usually losing weight, because I feel like one of the things that really ties together all those unrestricted foods is the fact that they all have a lot of fiber. The beans and legumes, whole grains, fruits and vegetables are all really high fiber sources. And, we're kind of notoriously low in fiber. I think fiber would be another good topic that we could sort of hone in on one of these days. But usually people are losing weight on a Mediterranean diet, and we can actually try to look at that as well. I'll try to share my screen. Oh, let's just see if this works. Is that coming in okay?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's great.
So a good image of the unrestricted foods, the foods that we have in moderation throughout the week. So that would include some animal foods, and then the ones to have on special occasions. And yeah, so we see a lot of these green categories are the high fiber foods, but some are high calorie. So we would want to be careful on those higher calorie foods if the goal is weight loss. Although I'll just pull up this ginormous diagram as well, or this chart table, I guess.
Visually, this is a lot. I'm not even gonna lie.
Right, isn't it? We can kind of break it down a little bit on a separate episode. Here, let me see if I can zoom in. Oh, I'm using the wrong computer to try to zoom in. There we go. So right at the top, you'll see weight. So they've got lots of studies of people either following Mediterranean diet or other diets, and they do see some weight loss, but it's only, this is only 2 kilograms. So that's something like 5 pounds of weight loss that can be guaranteed, but it's not meant to be a weight loss diet per se, though most people do lose weight on it. So yeah, I would just overlap it with, you're following Mediterranean guidelines, and make sure we're avoiding those higher calorie ones.
Nice. All right. So y'all, we are wrapping up here. So does anybody have any final thoughts, any questions that maybe somebody might have? What are we thinking?
I will say out of all of the nutritional intervention, therapy, lifestyle changes, I would say this is actually one that is amongst favorites popularly amongst quite a few dietitians. And I believe just because of the kind of composition and structure of as you saw from Riley's picture of like what's composed of this sort of dietary approach. A lot of times too, when we incorporate these foods, even if we don't have a particular goal, whether it's either weight loss or we're just trying to be more preventative with cardiovascular disease, incorporating these foods can also help with a lot of other things too. It could help with actually our kiddos. Some kiddos, it can help with optimal growth and development, and also promotes healthy weight as well. And some other actual disease states that was mentioned could potentially improve insulin resistance and reduce risk of metabolic syndrome and cardiovascular disease and polycystic ovary syndrome, as well as chronic kidney disease stages 1 through 5, as long as we're not on dialysis. If we incorporate these lifestyle changes, it may improve the sort of fat profiles when we do blood tests, and potentially irritable bowel syndrome. Can also potentially improve any sort of severity, stool consistency, because we got that fiber. It's a bit more high in fiber than just our general American diets. Potentially help with the pain and abdominal pain and bloating, and as well as quality of life. And yeah, so what I've noticed, even just like looking into this diet kind of more so evidence-based, it kind of seems it's pretty healthful, and it can potentially improve even just labs in different disease states. So there's a lot more, it seems, benefit to kind of incorporate this diet and lifestyle changes into our meal routines than really cons that I've seen. So yeah, I mean, of course, with any lifestyle changes, we do have to, of course, consider any food allergies and being cautious with that. But for the most part, as long as we are clear to food allergies and we're pretty good with most foods, then I would say, considering this, if someone's considering this lifestyle Mediterranean diet, it's definitely worth a shot.
Definitely.
That's great.
Thank you. Riley, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of how Mediterranean diet could be beneficial to kids, so I appreciate you bringing that up, Sam. I guess final thoughts would be additional questions for the future. I think it'd be a good topic. Potentially, we could dive into plant-based diet and what that means, because it's kind of like there's different definitions depending who you ask, and depending on those definitions, like Mediterranean diet or vegan or like what they call the planetarian diet from the Eat Lancet Commission. Some of those can be considered a plant-based diet or not, depending who you ask. So it'd be interesting to dive into those as well. I appreciate y'all's time today.
Nice. Well, thank you guys so much, Riley and Sam. Thank you for tuning in to the Looking Up, Looking Out podcast. We hope that covering the Mediterranean diet, we answer some of your questions, maybe your thoughts if you're trying to make these lifestyle changes. And I would say my final thought is just to remember that that this is a progression. Progressively add these things in, progressively maybe wean yourself off of some of the things that you know are not healthy for you. And even just a little bit that you're doing is going to be helpful. So thank you again for tuning in, and I hope that you stay tuned for more videos to come. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's all the time we have today. Thanks again for joining us. If there are any topics you want our expert opinion on, want us to research, or have any questions about, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe for more great content. If any of you are interested in working with any of us personally to work on your lifestyle changes like we discussed today from a preventative approach, the links to our businesses are in the description below. We will keep looking up to look out for you. See you next time.